Jones gives it to Corey Kiner, charges straight up the middle and runs into the end zone, standing up, giving him 100 yards and giving the Bearcats a 16-7 lead. Newman has the ball, takes a pass toward the corner, does it again, passes to Bandego. Aziz outside the arc. Now Lukosius curls off a screen, shoots a three, makes it. He made it. 3 seconds to go. The Bearcats up by 1. San Francisco launches from center court. No good. Simas Lukosius.
His 5th plate appearance tonight. He swings and hits it high and deep to left field. Goodbye, home run. Carrington Cross. A 3-run shot. And it's now 7-3 Cincinnati.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the GoBeercats podcast, part of the Catskeller Social Club, and now member of the College Huddle community. If you're not new around these parts, you'll see that we're missing Darren this evening. He's still putting his life together, back together after moving to Nashville. But we do have Jake and Chase from the Folsom Frenzy Podcast here to tell us all about the Colorado Buffaloes. This is the last in the series, gentlemen, at least until the Big 12 decides to expand again. So maybe we saved the best for last. No pressure here. But how are we doing tonight?
Excellent. Thanks for having us on. And, hopefully we're not the worst podcast you guys have had. I know we're kind of a familiar face to a lot of Big 12 fans. So excited to be coming back. We've been saying for years we should go back to the Big 12. So, rest in peace to the Pac-12. But excited to be back and back in a conference that actually cares about college sports.
True that.
Feels good. It does feel good, gentlemen. Before we're going to get into football. You guys have a pretty polarizing / famous / exciting coach on the sidelines, walking up and down that thing. We're going to get into that. We'll talk basketball. Maybe we'll talk some other sports here as well. But this is the GoBeercats podcast. So we like to start things off around here with a beer. So I'll open it up to you guys first. Or are we sipping on anything while we talk or in chat this evening?
Chase, let me go first because it is very disappointing. I got a local Colorado brewer, a big brewery state, and I'm going with Stella Artois. So.
Absolutely brutal look.
Brutal.
I live in Atlanta now, so I've got a local one to Atlanta. It's Hell on High Pomegranate. Not a bad beer. I don't know if I'd buy it again, but I'm drinking it out of the Sink Cup, which is one of the famous. If anyone the game is actually in Boulder this year with Cincinnati. So if anyone's going to go, you got to stop at the Sink. It's super famous, actually pretty good. Barack Obama ate there on the campaign trail, and definitely check it out for sure.
We might have to get into that a little bit more here. The Sink, I like it already. I'm going with a local brew here. This is Grainworks. I'm always big into Pina Coladas in any way, shape, or form. So this is in beer form, I guess. It's a pretty hot day today out here in Cincinnati, gentlemen. I golfed 18 this morning. Came home, grilled. Had a nice little Monday here for a summer Monday. So we'll top it off with a pina colada and talking sports. So sipping on that throughout the chat here, guys. But so I want to know. I always ask every podcast, every group of people that we've had on here. I think I could probably get an idea of this, but kind of tell us, the listeners, how Folsom Frenzy Podcast got started and how you guys arrived at that name.
Yeah, I don't know if Jake wants to go. I can go.
Go for it.
Maybe you can fill me in, Jake. But yeah, so we're a bunch of actual like diehard CU fans for years and years. So I know everyone started paying attention to Colorado again with Coach Prime, but we're doing the math, and we have 5 hosts that kind of rotate, and all of us except for Jake, I guess, have significant histories of families that went to Colorado. We all grew up Colorado fans. We're all from Colorado. And so when we were in college and in undergrad, we actually created what was called the Folsom Frenzy because Colorado was really, really struggling with student attendance, frankly, struggling with attendance, period, because of how god-awful our football team was. And so Jake here, my co-joiner, started what was called the Folsom Frenzy. The Colorado football stadium is called Folsom Field, to give you kind of some context. And so we started a grassroots student organization to get students to the games, make games fun again for students. We would get there when gates opened 2 hours early. We would stay the entire game. We'd watch Colorado get steamrolled by Oregon by what felt like 300 points there to the bitter end. And so, we dressed up. Jake had a Batman CU costume. I had an actual Buffalo costume. So diehards for life. And my point being that, a lot of people and a lot of these podcasts that have popped up are all, Coach Prime fans, and that's great. We love Coach Prime, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure. But we're I think a little bit unique in our niche is that, we've been here for a long time. We know where we're coming from. We know what it's like to go through those dark years. We have a little bit more context about our other programs at Colorado. So excited to be there. We're trying to serve those fans. We were here long before Prime came. We'll be here long after he's there. We're just excited, or long after he's gone, but just excited for the ride. And Jake, if I missed anything, that's kind of our, I guess the last thing I'll mention is we started the podcast when Prime came because, we thought it was important to have a voice of, people who were there before. So everyone calls us posers, say that we only exist because of that. But I have to give us our flowers about kind of our background, where we come from, and kind of the origin of our podcast.
Yeah, Chase,
Jake,
that's great. I don't think I have anything else to add. I mean, yeah, we were just student section leaders and became cranky alumni that wanted to start a podcast. So here we are. Not as cranky anymore, though.
That's good. That's good. I guess we can sort of like dive into what you could call the Prime effect, the Dion effect. I mean, as Cincinnati fans, I think we would be lying to ourselves if when Coach Fickle left and Prime is available at that same time with the history that he had here playing baseball for the Reds. A lot of people. I mean, this city is still obsessed with a mediocre baseball team. If that kind of gives you an idea how I feel about the Reds. But there are plenty of fans. My good friends Coomer and Hummer, who do another podcast about UC. They were certainly all about the Prime. Get on the Prime bus, see if we can't, rob a Brinks truck to bring them to Cincinnati. So, and, this sort of tell us about what, like your guys' reaction to him deciding to come to Colorado and sort of that effect that he's had since he's been there.
Yeah. I'm trying to go back to our reaction. I forgot that Cincinnati was in the running, but I just remember we were all.
I don't know if we were in the running, but we would like to have thought that we were.
You guys are definitely in the running.
I don't know what the behind the scenes details were.
Yeah, man, Chase, you remember like leading up into that? I think it all happened pretty quick.
Yeah, let me give some context. So Colorado had just gone 1-11 and barely. I mean, should not have won that one game. It was I think a double overtime win
against Cal,
which was not a good team. We rushed the field. I mean, that was a miserable team. And I remember after the Utah game where we got absolutely steamrolled, calling one of my friends. I mean, we've been diehard fans for life. And I called him and I was like, I think being a Colorado football fan is legitimately bad for my health. And I don't know if I can keep doing this. I was like, college football's a mess right now. I mean, I love this team to death. I'm there for all these games. And like, this team just does not love me back. And so, the vibes were bad. And I remember seeing some rumors that Coach Prime was maybe in the running for Colorado. And the theory around campus and the theory in the program was we have to make a big splash now because the way college sports is going, USC had just left. I mean, you got to remember USC and UCLA had just left the conference. The Pac-12 was reeling. Our team was far and away the worst team, probably in Power 5, if we're being honest. I mean, we were just absolutely horrible. And everyone's looking around and going, we have to make a big move right now or we are going to be irrelevant forever. And everyone knew that. And Karl Dorrell was such a, for Cincinnati fans that don't know, Karl Dorrell was our coach beforehand. And he was such an underwhelming hire after Mel Tucker was hired away from us by Michigan State. And so it was just so demoralizing. And so when those rumors came up, I think the general consensus was nothing good happens to Colorado football. Coach Prime is not coming to Colorado. Anyone who says that he is kidding himself. I mean, people close to the team were saying that. People close to the organization were saying that. Everyone was like, there's no chance give up on it. I mean, we legitimately thought it was more likely he was going to go to USF than to Colorado. And so when the smoke started getting kind of out there, and Cincinnati, I know, I remember Cincinnati was in the running, at least in the rumor mill. It's hard to know what's real and what's not. But when the smoke started picking up, we were like, oh my God, like maybe it's possible. And we were like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it can't be any worse than Carl Durrell. And, I went to Penn State for my grad degree, so I cheer for them as well. And, people would talk to me and they, it was like you were an orphan. They were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry you're a Colorado football fan. Like that is, I can't imagine a fate worse. And the worst part is like, we were diehard Colorado football fans. And so like the people were like, I don't know how you do that to yourself. Right. And so when Prime got hired, it was probably, I hate to say this. I'm glad my wife's not here right now. It's probably one of the top 5 days of my life. And that includes getting married. And we actually won the TCU game on my wedding day. So, I mean, it was spectacular because there was hope, right? We were talking about, we were on the front page of ESPN. And so, Cincinnati fans, you guys were just at the top of the mountain in that playoff game. Right. And I know it didn't go the way that you wanted, but you're still in the playoff. And so to have like hope again and to think that, people are going to hate Deion Sanders. People are going to love Deion Sanders. And we'll talk about that, I'm sure, tonight. But to have to be relevant again and to have people talking about our program and to not be the total laughing stock of college football for just a moment was spectacular. So that's kind of my memory on that. I'm sorry, I probably went on for 2 minutes there alone, but it was a big deal. And it was an emphasis on the fact that the university was not going to just let our athletics department disappear as college sports changed. It was we're going to swing big, and we might not get over the fence, but we're going to go out swinging. And, I'm really proud of that hire. And people are always like, well, he's just going to leave. And, he might, who knows, we're hopeful he'll stay. But, even if he leaves, we had 2 years where we were relevant. We were able to build something. And that's what's exciting for us.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I just kind of want to touch on the history of Colorado football a little bit going into the whole Coach Prime hire. CU's had a long history of college football, a long, strong history. It's one of the best college football programs in the country. If you're looking at overall history, like the overall win record for CU is just above 500 at 570. We have one national championship, 26 conference championships, most of those being in the Big 12 and also the Big 8, 30 bowl games. We're 31st all-time wins. So CU is a very historic program. And to give you all a little bit more context, we kind of peaked in the 1990s when we won the national championship. We actually won it with a 5th down. We've been split that national championship with Miami, Chase?
Georgia Tech. There's a lot
Georgia
of aspects
Tech,
on that national championship.
Yes, but yeah, we still got it. So Bill McCartney was our head coach. If you want to learn more about Colorado, I 100% recommend watching the documentary, The Gospel According to Mac. It's really great. It's a 30 for 30 on ESPN. And then after that, we had a little spew of slaps on the wrist, maybe even more egregious than that from the NCAA, that really took Colorado downhill pretty dramatically. And then fast forward to call it the 2010s. We made some bad coaching hires after Gary Barnett. I guess Gary Barnett was before 2010. I think, Chase, correct me if I'm wrong, but it goes Coach Mack, then Gary Barnett. And then there was someone in the Embry, right?
Neuheisel, and
Thank
then
you.
Embry, Hawkins.
Thank you.
Tucker, Durrell, and now Coach Prime.
Yeah. So kind of Embry was kind of the big mishire by CU. The 2012 season, we won, I believe, one game. And Chase was talking about how bad the 2016 season was, but that 2012 season was a lot worse because there was no hope coming out of that. And then we had a stint with Mike McIntyre, which we cracked the top 10 in 2016. It's a magical year. But other than that, we've been just down in the dumps. After Mike McIntyre, we had Mel Tucker we were really high on and then just left us at midnight for Michigan State. He told a donor group that I'm committed to CU and then then the next day.
I was at that.
So
I was at that event, by the way. So I got told by Mel Tucker right before he left. Yeah, it was,
there you go. After you just donated a bunch of money, right? But long story short, we've been really down and out the last 20 years. CU fans are super jaded and super skeptical. And we have a saying on Twitter called hashtag buff shit, because it seems like shit always happens to us. but we're still a very historic football program. So going it with that history, I think everyone was kind of for the Deion Sanders hire, and we just wanted to change it up.
So, I mean, you guys go 4-8 last year. I think, for a 4-8 team, I don't know if there was another team ever with the publicity or the spotlight on Colorado. It seemed like every week, or it was game day or big noon, or just the coverage was like kind of unreal. And I mean, I would compare that. I would say it was even greater than like a college football playoff run. Like, so I guess 4-8. That's not high on anyone's priority list. Not what anyone's looking forward to. I mean, that's better than a 1-9 season. What are you like? What's the outlook or like expectations that CU fans have going into year 2?
Oh boy,
we haven't talked about this on our podcast yet, Chase.
So I'll give
they're astronomically high.
Let me give a more realistic view. So Jake and I differ on this a lot. Jake is a perpetual optimist. I think. I mean, so here's the thing. We have, and we can talk, roster maybe a little bit more, but we have Shedeur at quarterback, who is, I don't want to ruffle feathers. I know, but probably the best quarterback in the Big 12 next year, at least one of them. Certainly.
Best quarterback as far
in the country. Exactly. Yeah, Jake,
I'm here to ruffle feathers, Chase.
And then we have Travis Hunter, who by all accounts deserves to go number 1 overall next year. He probably won't because he's not a quarterback, but absolute stud on both sides of the ball, right? He is the best player on the field every time he gets on the field on either side of the ball. He is amazing. He's I mean, he is definitely the best player to ever play for Colorado, at least that I can remember. Like, we've won a Heisman. Travis is better than Rashawn Salam. Like, Travis is that guy. And so expectations are pretty high. But, it's hard to tell, right? The Big 12 looks to be pretty open next year. I think Utah is going to be really good. So you just have to kind of look around. I mean, I told my friends a couple days ago, I would be floored if we don't win 6 games and make a bowl game next year. I wouldn't be surprised if we're competing for the Big 12. I'd be pretty surprised if we're terrible next year. I know a lot of people would be thrilled to see that, but to your point, we were all over TV. We were a big story because we started winning and no one expected us to. And then that kind of cooled off and turned into haters when we started losing those games. And there's a lot of problems with that roster. First and foremost, if anyone watched any of the games, our offensive line was maybe the worst thing I've ever seen in my entire life. So, those are things where, can Coach Prime fix those issues? I don't know. The recruiting has definitely been there this year. Our transfers are going to make us a lot better on the lines, but it's hard to tell. Like, the good corners are going to want to play for Coach Prime for obvious reasons, but do good O-linemen want to? We have Jordan Seaton coming in. We have some really good transfers, but they need to gel and protect our quarterback. And, we might make some noise next year. I think we're going to be pretty good. Now, Jake's going to tell you we're going to win the national championship next year. So I just had to get that out there, that there are Colorado fans, despite what you see on Twitter, that are realistic about what expectations are. Getting to a bowl game is a big deal for this program. I think I've seen us make maybe 1 or 2 bowl games in my entire lifetime, despite being a Colorado fan my entire life. So, that would be a big achievement on its own. So Jake, go ahead and tell everyone that we're winning everything now.
Well, I think the general consensus among CU fans is right around 8 wins. And I'm probably there too. I haven't given my official prediction yet. Chase, I'm not quite that high. But yeah, to Chase's point, we have the talent at the skill positions. I think this wide receiver group is definitely our biggest strength. I think we have one of the best wide receiver groups in the Pac-12 or the Big 12. There we go. There's the first slip up. But Travis Hunter's leading that group. He's a top 5 pick, even at wide receiver. And then you have Will Shepard, who we brought in from Vanderbilt, led Vanderbilt in receiving. He is a stud. He'll be probably top 3 round draft pick. He might sneak into the second round, I think. And then we got a lot of good slot receivers as well. Jimmy Horn being one of those guys. And I'm forgetting a guy that we just got who's also a stud. But our wide receiver group's really strong, and our secondary is also really strong. So we got the position players. And our biggest weakness is probably your linebacker core and your offensive line. We really reloaded on the defensive line and offensive line. Our offensive line was just so bad last year, as Chase was saying. We gave up over 50 sacks, which was the most, I think, in the FBS. And Joel Klatt, who's a CU alum, so he's probably just tooting his own horn there. But he was saying CU gave up 50 sacks. Imagine if they give up 25, and they're an average offensive line. CU last year got blown out in 2 games. Every other game, they lost by a touchdown or less. It was a close ball game. And now you have this team who knows this is their last year because Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, Shiloh Sanders are all going to the NFL. So I think they're gonna pull together a couple close wins, and I think 8 wins is a reasonable expectation.
Does the fan base, because like we'll see this a little bit with basketball, like they're high on Coach Prime, being able to recruit, certainly brings guys in, like very active in the portal and whatnot. Like, does anyone question his like on-field in-game coaching? Or is that just, some, how does that look?
Can I start, Chase? That's a good question. So Coach Prime, at least on the CU side, has a lot of the fans think he can do no wrong. And I don't mind it as a CU fan, but I could see it how other fan bases think it's nuts. But we talk about this on our podcast quite a bit, the things that he has done in game that kind of drive us nuts. Chase, do you want to go for it and highlight some of the things?
It's just like bad. You talk about EV and like expected win, and for example, the one that is probably the most notorious from last season is in both games that went to overtime, we won the toss and then elected to go first. And that is like, you should get executed for that. Like, not it's being hyperbolic, but like that is, I think someone ran the math, and you give up a 6% EV on the win probability the second you do that. And he comes out and says, well, we're confident in our offense. We're going to just go out and score. But it's just not how you play the game, right? Because if you fail, all the other team has to do is walk out their kick or kick the 25-yard field goal or whatever. Or I guess, 30, 42, whatever it is. And you win. And so like you are costing yourselves wins. And Coach Prime is really bad about doing that. He also fired our offensive coordinator, Sean Lewis, which, I don't know how closely everyone listening to this podcast followed Colorado last year, but Sean Lewis actually left a head coach job in the MAC from Kent State to come be the OC at Colorado. And which I guess, you guys are probably, this is MAC country that we're talking to. So
I think he was a finalist for the job here.
Yeah. And he's great. Like, he got fired, but it was because, we were so pass heavy, and people said that was because Coach Prime wanted Shedeur to get yards and stuff like that. That stuff drives me crazy. And so I don't know how real that is, but Sean Lewis is many things, but he is not a bad offensive mind. And so, to let him go halfway through the year was crazy to me. And that kind of stuff drives me crazy. Now we have to trust the process, and we're with Coach Prime, ride or die, right? Because that's just where our program's at, and he's been a blessing for our program. But some of the decisions you really scratch your head at, and what's frustrating is you can't be critical on Buff's Twitter without getting absolutely railed by the Coach Prime fans. I think you just have to understand he's great at recruiting, he's great at branding, he's great at bringing attention to the program. Maybe not the best in-game football coach, or at least is not doing what's smart statistically, at least.
Yeah, the running game was a big one last year. Like we were up 28 points maybe on Stanford, maybe 21, and we kept throwing the ball. And Sean Lewis's offense is known for being fast. So they're running a fast tempo, like hurry up offense, throwing the ball when they're up 21. And every CU fan's pulling their hair out, and we lost to Stanford. So it was things like that just were big question marks.
I find that very interesting because I follow college football, so I learned about Colorado whether I wanted to or not, just like I learned about Alabama and Georgia whether I want to or not. But I didn't follow it that closely to know those things. So I find that very interesting that the fans have that point of view. While we're on the topic, earlier when we first got started, you guys had mentioned coming over to a conference where people really care about college sports. Coming from the American Conference up to the Big 12, we would go to East Carolina or Tulsa or Temple, God, and they had no fans online or in their stadiums. If Houston still doesn't, but they came along for the ride anyway. So like once we got interacting online, Central Florida fans wasted no time pissing everybody off. But what's the Buffs fan base like online? Are they an online fan base? I don't know. I can't say that I've interacted with too many of them yet. But tell us about that sort of culture online.
Yeah, you guys probably haven't interacted with us yet because we're busy with Oregon and USC fans still at the moment, especially with the recruiting battles we're in. But this probably is a hot take. But Chase, let me know if you agree. But I think CU might become the villain of the Big 12, just because Deion Sanders is so polarizing, and our fans are great on Twitter. They're very active, or X, I should say. And if people are talking smack, we're going to keep those receipts and show them what's up. But yeah, Chase, I'm curious your take.
Yeah, I love Colorado football. I love the program. I am one of these fans that I'm about to talk about. Colorado has probably the worst fans in college football. I mean, at least some of the worst. I mean, they are horrifically toxic. The fans in the stadium are even worse. If you travel to Boulder, I'm very sorry. Beautiful place to visit. People will be very nice to you outside of game day. But and I guess just a quick story. We actually went out when Colorado played Nebraska, the old Big 12 rivalry, went out to Lincoln, and I expected them to be horrible because they're horrible on Twitter. And we get there in the student section, we have to walk by it to get to our seats. And I'm like, oh my God, like this is the worst thing that could happen. And as we're walking by, I'm like really nervous, and they lean down and they're like high-fiving us. And they're like, welcome to Nebraska. We're glad you're here. And so we're like, oh my God, these are such great fans. We hate them. We hate their school. If they got hit by a bus, I wouldn't care, but they're really wonderful. And so we're talking to this really elderly couple, super sweet to us. And I'm like, thank you so much for welcoming us. You should come out to Boulder next year. And she goes, I'm never going back to Boulder. I hate all of your fans. When we were there back in 1990 or something like that, you guys threw urine-filled balloons at me and my now husband. We will never go back. We hate you. And I wish I could tell you that we had changed, but it's just not true. Our fans are horrible. Our fans are, I love it, right? It makes it like a rough environment and stuff like that. But it is not pleasant. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's also reflected on Twitter. I think it sometimes is. I think the worst of all fan bases show up on Twitter, but we are not going to win any Samaritan awards in the Big 12 by any stretch. I wouldn't be surprised if we become the villains. Fortunately, I think Utah Twitter and UCF Twitter, which we've already gotten our own dose of, is so toxic that but to your point, right? The alternative is that the fans don't care, right? Like in the Pac-12, Utah, right? You would play Stanford and like we would legitimately joke. We'd be like, we are trying to start arguments on Twitter, but we cannot find any Stanford fans on Twitter. Like we just can't find them other than the Stanford Tree account, right? And so, what's amazing about this conference is that everyone was so excited or at least a lot of people were very excited and welcoming when Colorado and Utah and Arizona State came back to the Big 12. I think Colorado was first, but they were like super welcoming. And then you realize very quickly, we're going to hate each other, but that's awesome because that builds engagement and that builds, that gets the Big 12 talked about, and it's fun. Like that's what we do it for. And so, it was nice to have common ground. In this world, we have to cheer Big 12 over everyone, right? Like you have to back the conference because the SEC and Big 10 are coming to, essentially, in a perfect world, they want to essentially destroy kill the Big 12 and stop sharing money with. So we got to back the Big 12, and I'll be cheering for you guys every time we're not playing. But wow, it's going to be fun, but it's going to be pretty toxic, I think.
Absolutely. That's everything. I'd echo everything that you just said. Just as now a Big 12 fan, right? Going into my second year here as a Big 12 fan. So I think everyone would echo that, especially with the way conferences are here and gone and expanding and everything in this era. I want to kind of stay on like the fan point of view here. As we talked a little bit of football here, but I want to dive more into the fan base a little bit here. You guys being the voice of them here for us. What would you say, like excluding the the three other schools coming with you guys? Is there a school in any football, basketball, whatever, in any sport that you guys are looking forward to either playing and going up against or maybe starting a rivalry with?
Yeah, Jake might have to reflect on that. But we've talked about this a lot. So this is not a dig at Cincinnati or anything like that, but for me, it's the nostalgia of coming back to the Big 12. And so
definitely a different aspect than any of the other ones for sure.
Right. And so like coming home and having the opportunity to play schools that, like, when I was 8 years old, I watched Colorado play Kansas and Kansas State. For me, I think so. Oklahoma State lost their natural rival. They need a new rival. I'm hopeful. I think we got scheduled actually. They're the last game of the year, so that they're during the rivalry week. So hopefully that'll become a thing. They absolutely beat the brakes off us in the Alamo Bowl back in 2016, which I went to. And at that day, I was like, I will never support Oklahoma State ever again. So I think the seeds are there. We could definitely get there. But I think for me, Oklahoma State's the one that I'm most excited about. Kansas State, all those old Big 8, Big 12 rivals, just because it's just nice to like go home. We never had any success in the Pac-12. And so the nostalgia there is really what's there for me. But I'm excited. I live in Atlanta now. People complain about how geographically spread out the conference is, but I'm excited. We're playing at the Bounce House at UCF, right? And I looking forward to going to games there and, having accessibility as an alum where, in the Pac-12, it's on the West Coast. Sorry, you're out of luck. You got to fly back to Boulder if you want to catch a game. So that's what's really exciting for me. And it's just exciting to see new stadiums and new campuses and, a conference that's going to be a lot of fun. Jake, did you come to your final decision? You should do Cincinnati
just to start something here. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think a lot of CU fans have said Kansas State. That was a kind of a historic rival in the Big 12. It wasn't our number one rival in the Big 12, but Kansas State is kind of the one that rings a bell. We also had one of our starting running back transfer to Kansas State. So there might be a little beef there. He was a good kid, and I don't think he'll talk any smack, but you never know. Especially with being a CU fan, everyone likes to talk smack to CU. And then I know you said excluding the schools that came over with us, but just to comment on those, the Pac-12 tried to pin us against Utah to be our rival, and that never stuck. Talking about how bad CU fans are, Chase and I and another group of students went out to Utah and decided to plant a card stunt in their fan section that said "SCO CU." And it ended up failing. We got them to hold up the cards, but they didn't spell anything. But we were just like, we want to try to start something with Utah. Like, let's try it. And then at the end of the game, we were like chatting with this family who was Utah fans, and they were great. And we took a group picture, and we gave them some Utah gear that we bought to go undercover in their fan section. So Utah's not going to be the rival for us. Arizona has always been kind of a basketball rival for us. Same thing with Kansas. Even when we were in the Pac-12, we had a big win over Kansas in 2013 or maybe 2014. But they were a top 6 team. We shot a half-court buzzer beater, and it's my favorite college memory. So Kansas is definitely high up on our list for hoops for sure.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, that's good stuff. That's funny that you gave away the gear that you had bought. Like, what are you going to do with it? So you might as well unload it.
Exactly. And they were so nice to us. I mean, how could we not?
That's hilarious. So, I mean, game day seems pretty hostile around Folsom Field. So, but my birthday weekend this year on October 26th, Cincinnati scheduled to play at Colorado. Give us sort of like, okay, I'm not going to be able to make it, unfortunately, but let's say if I'm a Cincinnati fan traveling, which we do travel a little bit better than what we get credit for. So we're traveling, we show up, kind of paint us a picture what game day is like around the arena.
Yeah. Jake hasn't actually been to a game in like 10 years. So I don't know if he,
That's true. That's true. I've lived in New York City for the last 5 years, so I couldn't go to a game. But one thing I want to touch on before we get on into Saturday is Friday night, CU does what's called the Pearl Street Stampede. And if you're coming to Boulder, 100% spend a lot of time on Pearl Street. It's the main street in Boulder. There's a lot going on, a lot of great restaurants, a lot of great bars on Pearl Street. But Friday night around like 8 p.m., I want to say, there's what CU does. It's called the Pearl Street Stampede. Mm-hmm. And it's a big parade down Pearl Street, which all the team comes to. And Coach Prime usually says a few words. And we have like fire trucks going down the main street. And this is a street where cars don't normally drive on. So it's just kind of a fun environment on Pearl Street the night before. But yeah, Chase, because I haven't been to a game in the last 20 years. Do you want to give the update on Folsom on Saturday?
Quick lowdown. So Boulder's great. If you're trying to save money, maybe stay in Broomfield. The buses actually into Boulder are really good, and traffic can get bad. So, definitely go to Pearl Street. Pearl Street's also where the bars are, that are pretty good down in Boulder. A lot of fun down there. The Dark Horse is a place that I would definitely recommend. The Sink, which is the pint glass I'm drinking out of, the famous restaurant we talked about at the beginning. So a lot of cool places to check out. People tend to really like Boulder. You can go down to Golden and check out the Coors Brewery, but the actual game day itself, I'd say, tailgating's good, not great at Colorado. It covers pretty much the whole campus. But it's a lot of fun. You never know what time the game will be scheduled. So if it's at 10 a.m. Mountain Time, I mean, they've done that to us before, right? And they'll do it again. So it really just depends. Hopefully it's a night game and you can kind of check out Boulder and enjoy the area. Denver International is very easy to fly into. You can stay pretty much anywhere along the bus route and just bus into Boulder the day of the game to save some money, which is what I would probably do. But it's a lot of fun. You can't go wrong. And then, make sure more than anything, make sure you are in before kickoff, because Ralphie, our live mascot, runs the team out onto the field, both before the game and halftime. And I think a lot of people either forget or are not paying attention or have problems getting into the stadium, and it can take a while to get into the stadium. So make sure you're there. I think she runs approximately 10 minutes before kickoff. And that's just really cool to see. Like, everyone should see that at least once if you're a serious college football fan. In my opinion, it's up there with the whiteout at Penn State. It's up there with, it's just one of those like really iconic, I'm sure it'll be in the video game sort of moments. And so my point being, make sure you're there in time for that, because you're definitely not going to want to miss that.
Yeah. And the away seats are in the northwest corner of the football field. But if you get there early, go to the east end and go high up, because you can get that gorgeous view of the mountains. It's definitely worth it to see it. Also in Boulder, check out Avanti. It's a cool restaurant with a great view. Boulder's known for being the prettiest college town in the U.S. So check out the view of the Flatirons. That's the mountains behind the stadium. Chautauqua Park is another great place to check out. But Boulder on game day is the best. It's a blast.
What about beer in the stadium?
We have that.
We have beer in the stadium, but I just found out, according to Twitter, it is the second most expensive beer in the stadium after the University of Tennessee. So it is expensive. So definitely pregame before you get there. And then I feel like, when in Rome, you got to drink a Coors Banquet. But, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Good to know about the beer, though. It's hit or miss in this conference.
We're a local brewery. Colorado's a big brewery state.
Sure.
What's more local than Coors? Brewed down in Golden. Come on.
Yeah. The crisp Rocky Mountain water of Coors, right?
I have heard it is way better there than it's like brewed like the beer. The Coors that we get over here is not brewed in Denver. It's brewed like in North Carolina or something. I don't know, but it was. I've been told by many people it tastes much different and better out that way.
I drank a lot of it. I totally agree. I also think Keystone tastes better there, even though Keystone's a terrible beer, but it is brewed right there. So. Not advocating for Keystone. Please drink something decent. But if you're on that college budget, the Keystone's better in Boulder as well.
Very good. So, I mean, you kind of answered some of like my other questions that I was going to ask. The favorite like game day tradition sounds like it's the running of the buffalo. Definitely something people myself have seen on TV. But hopefully some Cincinnati fans will get out there and be able to see that live. It should be an interesting year. Definitely coming off a disappointing season for us. Depending on who you talk to, my co-host who's not here this evening, he's the more optimistic one out of the two of us. So I won't get too much into our expectations for football, because I don't want to be the Debbie Downer and not have my guy here to bring me back up and get me excited. So I do want to talk about some other sports, not just football, as we get deeper into this thing here. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Colorado had a pretty good basketball season this past year. Talk to us a little bit more about the winter sport basketball. 26-11 last year, if I'm not mistaken, and 13-7 in the conference, but made a nice little run to end the season.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jake is a perpetual Debbie Downer. Speaking of Debbie Downers, Jake is a perpetual Colorado Hoops Debbie Downer.
I thought he said he thought Colorado was going to win the national title.
He does in football.
I'm
and then
optimistic in football.
He is Jekyll and Hyde. Yeah.
Okay.
Really quickly before we talk basketball, I do want to mention one other thing. So Cincinnati is actually right now the most expensive ticket at Folsom Field next season. I don't know why. I'm assuming you guys must travel pretty well because it seems like it's not homecoming. It's just kind of a random game to be that expensive. So just want to give a warning. It might be good to wait and see if the tickets come down. But as of right now, they're the most expensive tickets on StubHub, or at least as of a week ago. So as far as Colorado Hoops goes, Colorado
maybe history first, Chase.
Yeah, so Colorado has literally negative basketball history. Like Chauncey Billups played for Colorado. They were pretty good. Otherwise, Colorado was absolute bottom feeder of the Big 12 college basketball team. They were horrible. We ended up hiring a coach named Tad Boyle, who's still our coach. He's been there for 20 seasons. He's our most winning coach of all time out of the University of Northern Colorado. And depending on who you ask, me versus
former
Jake,
Kansas grad too.
Yeah,
Big 12 connection there.
And he grew up in Boulder. He's been a lifer there, and he turned Colorado into a pretty respectable college basketball program. We've had on and off runs into the dance. They won the Pac-12 the first season we were in it. So competitive, but not necessarily a national championship contender by any stretch, but one of those teams that, we've put some guys in the NBA, recent champion Derek White. I drank some beers with him on St. Patrick's Day when I was in school.
Spencer Dinwiddie, Andre Roberson, Alec Burks, just to name a few.
Yeah. And so, the problem being that, so Cody Williams was our 5-star phenom. He's going to go in the first round. He was kind of a bust for his last season, but the talent's there. We're losing Tristan Da Silva. We're losing basically all of our really good guys. And the problem is that we were essentially a senior heavy team, or not, an older guy led team that was very competitive last year in the Pac-12 and, won, a tournament game. And now we're going into the Big 12, which is an absolute buzzsaw basketball conference, as everyone listening to this is aware, with losing all of our talent, and we really haven't recruited at a level to replace that. So we are very nervous about college basketball. Jake's about to tell you that he thinks we're going to lose every game next season, but things are not looking great. We have some talent, but I would not be, honest to God, dollars to donuts, I would not be surprised if we finished bottom 3 teams in the Big 12 next year in hoops. And part of that is just because the Big 12 is college basketball. But I mean, it's going to be a rough season next year, in my opinion. So, Jake, do you want to rein on that even further?
Yeah, I mean, Colorado fans have very low expectations for basketball next year, but I think that we got some upside. Our whole team is essentially transfer portal players at this point, because to Chase's point, we lost 3 studs to the NBA draft. Though 2 out of 3 of them are probably going first round, and then the third guy is probably mid-second round. We'll see here in a couple days. But yeah, a lot of transfer player guys. One of the most notable being Trevor Baskin. He's a guard coming from another school in Colorado, but a lot of hype and excitement around him. We're kind of hoping he's the next Dalton Connect. Dalton Connect also being from Colorado. Will he be Dalton Connect? Probably not, but just to be a little optimistic. We also got Elijah Malone, who's another transfer. Andre Javromikowski. I butchered that, but I think he is from Oregon State, and he was a contributor at Oregon State. I think averaged like 7 points per game. Julian Hammond is a guy that's coming back that isn't a transfer. He's probably going to be one of the leaders on this team, along with Javon Ruffin. He got a lot of playing time as well last year, who will also probably be a leader on the team. And then as well as Bangkok Dak, he's one of our big guys. He's 6'11". He's a sophomore out of Lincoln, Nebraska, ironically. But he was really exciting to watch last year, had a lot of explosive dunks, but he's still a very raw talent. So we'll have to see how we're looking. But yeah, pretty low expectations for hoops. We'll see. But Tad Boyle is a solid coach. CU fans love him. I'm kind of not as bullish on Tad Boyle because he hasn't made a Sweet 16 at CU. But yeah, we'll see. It should be an interesting year.
The Big 12 basketball is rough. It's super fun. Like I haven't had, this much fun losing games by 5 points, and since, we were in the Big East, playing, Syracuse, Georgetown, UConn, teams like that. That was great. That was, the heyday when I was still in school at UC. Those were, we were still in the Big East before it collapsed. So if you can win your home games in this conference, you'll be sitting pretty. After 1 year in this, seventh circle of hell that is Big 12 basketball, the advice I would be is win your home games and go from there. We didn't always do that this year, and we were on the outside looking in from the NIT tournament. But win your home games for sure. We've talked a lot about transfers. We've talked a lot about football the prime effect. What is something? Talk to me about the NIL around Colorado. What is that like? Is there sort of like an NIL? I don't know what the word is, like group that handles all of that. Is it more like one-off and private individuals? What is that like bringing new talent into the university?
Yeah, so kind of talking more on the football side, just because that's where this conversation comes up more so. CU does have an NIL collective fund.
Cool. That's the word.
Just started about a year ago. I would say in general, our fan base is pretty average in terms of donating to that fund, in terms of like collectives and even giving like sponsorship opportunities to student athletes. Yeah, like compared to the Big Ten, the SEC, CU is definitely, I think, a little bit behind those groups. But I just saw recently we're competing for a 5-star quarterback with Auburn and USC, and one of the On3 reporters reported that we're par with Auburn in terms of NIL, which was exciting to see. I think in the upper echelon of the CU donors, we actually don't do too bad. CU is a good school academically, and obviously that leads to potentially more money in the university. So our NIL is okay, long story short. One thing that is not talked about enough, specifically for football, is NIL doesn't come from the Boulder community for football as much as it does the national community. Deion Sanders is a bigger brand than Colorado football, whether we would like to admit it or not. He's a bigger brand than Auburn football. Like Deion Sanders is a huge national brand. Chase was mentioning it on our podcast. He's like, I see ads with Coach Prime everywhere in Atlanta. So we've seen it this year where he's given a walk-on player in a national commercial for, I think it was nuts or something silly. Both of his sons have been in commercials with him, I think, for KFC. Mm-hmm. So he gets a lot of national brand deals, not even connected with CU. And then that funnels back into the players' pockets. We have 2 players in the top 5 NIL earnings on the CU football team in Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. And you could argue like Shedeur is Coach Prime's son. He's obviously going to get that money in terms of the big brand name. But Travis Hunter is kind of proven that he can do that with anyone. But yeah, Chase, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I just think, it's worth mentioning that Denver sports kind of consumes the local sponsorship. So it's not like Tuscaloosa where every car dealership within 1,000 miles has to have a deal with an Alabama football player. So we don't necessarily have that. But to Jake's point, Coach Prime brings a lot of eyeballs, and with a lot of eyeballs comes a lot of exposure and NIL money. And, I just want to reiterate that we don't have a T. Boone Pickens like Oklahoma State had for years and years, but we do have donors that will step up when there's a reason to step up. And that's proven, we hadn't paid a head coach more than $3 million ever. I think maybe we paid Mel Tucker 3.5 right before he left, but it was like quote unquote impossible to compete. And when Mel Tucker left, actually for that deal at Michigan State, he left for 6.5. And the talk around town was Colorado will just never be, we're going to become a feeder program for coaches because we just can't compete. But, Rick George, our athletic director, goes and gets Coach Prime, and all of a sudden our donors are able to find, over $6 million for his contract, which has obviously paid itself off in spades for the university. But at the time they had to come up with the money, and the donors actually stepped up. So I think we have the donors, we have the NIL. We're not going to be number one in NIL by any stretch. Probably not, even in the Big 12, where I think NIL can be a little bit more challenging than Big 10 and SEC. We're just not not going to be king of the castle, but I think we can compete and get the money strategically, and I think they're trying to be pretty cognizant of that.
Very nice. So, gentlemen, I really only have like 3 more questions here for you, sort of off the beaten path questions. We talked about football, we talked about basketball. Those are the 2 big heavy hitters, for pretty much every university. Talk to me about, like, is there like a third, like, lesser known sport that Colorado is particularly good at?
Oh yeah. Look out for Colorado skiing, recent national champions. Not probably surprising to anyone.
Makes sense.
As well as our
cross country
and track and field teams. Cross country, we actually compete pretty year in, year out for national championships there. Unfortunately, we don't have a baseball team. We don't have a hockey team for whatever reason. If you can figure out why, let me know.
In women's basketball, we were a really great women's basketball team last year. Did we make the Sweet 16 last year?
Yeah, I think we made the Elite 8 the year before that. So
so back-to-back Sweet 16s. Our coach J.R. Payne is phenomenal. She's done a really great job with that program. So that program, I think, still on the up. We lost a lot of talent on the women's basketball team, but I'm very optimistic about that program. And then our volleyball program is decent. You'll see that team make the NCAA tournament pretty frequently as well. Yeah,
you brought up women's basketball. I know you guys are like top 5. Our team, UC played you guys in some sort of like holiday tournament or something, and we won. We beat someone maybe we shouldn't have beaten the first round. We're like, oh, we're playing Colorado, top 5 team. It's gonna be awesome. And then we get people tuned in to watch it. We have a Discord with like 200 member Discord. People get in there and fire off hot takes the whole time, and the thing's lighting up talking about women's basketball, which is awesome. And then second quarter hit, and we're like, let's find something else to watch because this is a massacre. I think you guys ended up beating us by like 40. But that team will fit in great with women's basketball in the Big 12 because it's got its own reputation as well. Chase, you kind of hit on this. Any sport that Colorado doesn't have that you guys want them to get as soon as possible?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it comes down to we were the only team in the Pac-12 without a baseball team. I know Big 12 didn't have a great year this year in baseball, but I know generally it's a pretty competitive conference, and I'd love to have a baseball team. Somehow Colorado and Denver, you talked about the Reds earlier. Somehow Colorado still supports the Rockies. There's baseball fans in Colorado. So that's one of those things where Coach Prime actually said he's going to try to get a baseball team for the university as part of like the what he brings to the school. And then in my mind, it's crazy that Colorado doesn't have a collegiate hockey team. Denver won the national championship this year. Colorado College has always been a really good team. So Colorado is not exactly a big hockey high school state, but hockey is a big deal in Colorado, and I'd love to get a team. I know the Big 12's not really big on that, so I think I would go baseball first, but those are probably my picks. Jake, do you have a different pick?
No, I don't have anything else to add. We don't have gymnastics, but definitely baseball and hockey before that. Same thing with like swimming. We don't have a swimming team, stuff like that.
Do you guys have wrestling?
No,
we do not. And
we don't have wrestling either, but it's pretty big in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, as someone who just graduated from Penn State with my grad degree, wrestling can be a lot of fun. Every school should have wrestling. That is a super fun collegiate sport. But yeah, it's just not. Colorado actually has one of the smallest athletic departments as far as number of teams goes in the P5 or what I guess P4 now or whatever it is. So people don't really realize that, I don't think. But it's always been kind of a smaller program, and football kind of runs the world, even though they were terrible for so long.
Very nice. Last question here, gentlemen. Very, very anxious to see where you guys go with this one here. What's one misconception people have about the university?
One quick one is I hate it when people call us UC.
I was literally about to say that.
When you open up the podcast saying UC, I'm like, it's kind of refreshing hearing that being used correctly. So that's a quick one, but let me think about it. Chase, do you have any?
No, I think the UC one was the one I was immediately going to say, and it kills us because commits will say, really excited, or not commits, but like prospective commits are like really excited to receive an offer from UC Boulder or Colorado University is the other one that drives us crazy. And we know it doesn't make sense. The history lesson is that California already had the UC system. Clearly, I I need to be careful because I know sometimes these schools in Ohio actually outdate a lot of the California schools. So maybe you guys had UC first. I don't know if California did or whatever it is.
We were 18-19, so I bet we beat Cal.
Yeah. But I mean, long story short is we went CU because we wanted to be different, and that is like a common misconception that drives us crazy. In particular. And then I think the other one that Jake kind of touched on is, I think a lot of people younger in particular think that Colorado has never been successful in college football. And so it's just, it's nice to meet people that remember like Colorado was really, really, really good. Like Colorado was one of the best teams in the country in the 90s, won that national championship, had a Heisman winner in 94, should have won the national championship in 1989. And so, it's not a program. It's a proud program. And so people always kind of give me a hard time because, they're like, you're living in the past or whatever, but it's one of those things where it's like, well, we haven't always been this bad. And we know that you can win in Boulder. Like you can win in Boulder, Colorado. And so when people act like, Prime is going to be a flash in the pan, maybe they're right. They could totally be right. But I also think it's a place where you can actually win and do well. And our fans are not as nice as people probably believe. So I wanted to throw that one in there too. Jake, did you ever think of an elegant one?
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I was thinking the exact same thing. I think CU is a sleeping giant in football. We've done it before. It's a gorgeous campus, great academics, solid NAL, and a great head coach. So everything's there in place. And yeah, it drives me nuts when people think we're just, so bad at football. But we have a very historic program to the likes of, Rashawn Salam, Brian Westbrook, Joel Klott, Darian Hagan, a ton of names that have been Alfred Williams that have been in the NFL, Daniel Graham. I just keep thinking of names. I've been in the NFL for so long. We're a very historic program, and we're looking forward to being back at that level.
Absolutely. Love it. Gentlemen, that's all the questions I have. I don't know if you guys have any questions for me. I would try to do my best to answer them without Darren here the best I could. If you do, if not, that's no problem either.
Yeah, well, I got two things. One, I would love to, I don't know if you guys do polls or whatever, but I am curious, what the vibe is around Satterfield, because I thought that was a good hire at the time. I know you guys got left in a bad spot with Fickle, and that's horrible, but I didn't think that was a terrible hire. So I'm curious what the thought process is and how warm that seat is based off how last season went. And then before I forget, I do have to just call out UCF on this podcast. This is our Welcome to the Big 12 podcast, because they said we shouldn't get invited back into the Big 12 when we were an original member to the Big 8. So I'm excited to be coming home. Had to call UCF out. I know everyone hates them, so I just want to back that up on here. But yeah, I'm curious, what are the thoughts on Satterfield? Is he legit? Does he just need more time? I know he was put in kind of a bad spot. I know you're the Debbie Downer, so I don't mean to ruin the vibes at the end of the podcast. But to go back to UCF, we like to call them the Hilton night managers around here. So yeah, they can get everything that's coming to them. So here's when like I noticed like I was the Debbie Downer, right? So like we have a website too that we'll blog, and people are welcome to contribute to and stuff. And we were Darren and I were talking on here about spring ball and like the practices and everything. And I was just like sitting, like after we got done talking on a show, I was just like thinking to myself, I was like, man, I'm not excited for spring football. Like in my first time in my adult life since coming to the University of Cincinnati in the fall of 2007. Because me growing up, it was all Cincinnati basketball. Like I still would die on the hill that Cincinnati is a basketball school. The younger guys, maybe fans around your guys' age or a little younger would push back on that, but I would show them the numbers and win that argument. When I realized, I was like, man, I'm not, for the first time ever, like I was camping out, sleeping on concrete Brian Kelly's first year here to get tickets to like UConn or West Virginia and Louisville. And I was a season ticket holder for forever. And then now my wife and I are expecting our first child, and I coach high school girls basketball as well. And between being a season ticket holder and coaching, with expecting a little one, something had to give. And I really didn't have to think twice about giving up those season tickets this year. So I blogged about it, and I told people that I was like, hey, I'm not excited. Gave up my tickets. Like we were bad last year. We were really bad.
I couldn't give my ticket away and have like my dad didn't want to even come down to watch a game with me. Like, and him and I go to a game every year. Like we've traveled to Ohio State and Michigan, Indiana. We'll travel for games, and he's just like, no, I'm not coming down. He's like, they suck and I'm too old. I'm like, all right, fine. So that was just sort of like the taste left in my mouth. Our quarterback play was god awful last year. Our offensive line was worse. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the University of Miami, Ohio. But they're our biggest rival in football, just because of proximity. They're like 45 minutes away. Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I was going to say.
His teams were literally the last team to beat Cincinnati in football. We beat them 17 years in a row, and we lost to them last year on a blocked field goal kick, and then they beat us in overtime. That sent me down a dark place, like a real dark place, like sitting in Nippert Stadium, where I've seen us, cash in on the college football playoff and win, conference championships, to lose to Miami, Ohio for the first time since George W. Bush was president last time we lost.
We know the feeling. We know the feeling.
So it's just a combination of things. I was with the talent we had coming back, I was like, we're going 500. It's 6-6, bare minimum expectations. And I was like, I took the over in real American dollars at 4.5 or 5.5. I forget what I got it at, but I was like, easy money. And then we beat EKU, we beat Pitt somehow on the road, and then we didn't win a game until we played Houston in November. He's done a really good job recruiting. Leaving Louisville, that place was kind of like a hot mess, and it sounds like he didn't have a whole lot of support within the athletic department there. He's transformed the football program in a lot of different ways, kind of modernizing it, I guess. I guess I said all of that to say the verdict is still out on whether this was a good hire. Still, I think we could have got to 6-6 last year, which is where we should have been. Moving into the Big 12, the Big 12 last year, we didn't play Texas, we didn't play TCU, we didn't play Kansas State, we didn't play like the top 3 teams going into the season that was projected to be the one of the top teams. So we had pretty much one of the easiest schedules in the Big 12, and still we only managed to beat Houston. So
is Fickle dead to you all now? Or I know when Mel Tucker left us, I was like, he could eat glass and it wouldn't be too good for him. But I mean, Fickle gave a lot to the program as well, so I don't know if it's like one of those,
When Brian Kelly left, that was brutal. Like, he kind of pulled the same thing as Mel Tucker. Like, hey, I'm here. I'm dedicated. He was on the top radio show in the city. Hey, yeah, I'm not going anywhere. I think it was his radio show, matter of fact. And then I don't know. It was just terrible timing. People hated him, still hate him. He came back for like a 10-year reunion of that team, and the crowd was like 50-50 on whether they cheered or booed. Fickle, I think he gets a lot more respect just because, he took us to the mountaintop, and it was just a lot of fun while he was coach here. He recruited a lot of Cincinnati guys. People, we get off on recruiting the state of Cincinnati, like a 200-mile radius around the city, which is some phenomenal high school football. And Fickle brought in as many of those guys as he could. So people still really, I think if you wanted to build a statue somewhere on campus, people probably wouldn't be that upset about it.
Okay. And I guess just one question for our podcast. If there's one thing, that people should know about the University of Cincinnati that most people might not know, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
That is interesting. I kind of said earlier, we travel well for all sports. Maybe not as well as, the people at the Sugar Bowl or the Orange Bowl think that we should or something or whatever, but we certainly travel well. This isn't a hot take. This is a fact. You can, check the tape, but we took over Notre Dame Stadium in 2021. We have a cheer called Down the Drive where it's like, we UC, and on the TV broadcast, you could hear that ringing out at Notre Dame. So, you know, we will travel well. I guess, you know, that is probably thinking of, you know, we're a smaller school, or people might have that sort of, you know, thought process, and that, you know, our fans wouldn't travel, but we'll get out and show out for the red and black throughout the country for sure.
Awesome.
I have one just general question about the Big 12. You mentioned the hatred for UCF. I'm curious, what are some other fan bases that are entitled or arrogant, or in general, who does the Big 12 not like within the conference? Is there a team that thinks like we're going to own it now that Oklahoma and Texas are gone?
That's a great question, and that's like a maybe like the biggest philosophical debate Big 12 fans could have. Like, do we need that flag bearer, or is it, you know, the next man up any season type of thing? I wouldn't call them like arrogant or you know, think that they're better than anyone, but Iowa State fans are online 24/7. But they're fun, especially like when you're on their side or they're on your side. Like I have plenty of Iowa State fans that follow the GoBeercats account on Twitter, and they'll chime in every once in a while on something related to them or not. So I mean, they're fun to interact with, just because there's a lot of, like, every Iowa State fan ever has a Twitter account. I think that's just true. Come basketball season, Kansas fans are they're real fun to interact with.
Deservedly so, though, right? I mean, they are the kings of the castle.
They are, yes. They beat us by like 5 or 6 at their place, and then we beat them in the Big 12 tournament in basketball by 20. But they had every excuse in the world for that. So, you know, a lot of that from, you know, a fan base that's used to winning all the time. They kicked our ass in football, so I can't say anything about that. And there's a lot of Texas Tech fans online, but they're, you know, generally not hostile. Iowa State can get pretty hostile. And Kansas State is like the fan base way out in left field, where you kind of like, maybe you forget about them sometimes, and then all of a sudden they've flooded your mentions. So the West Virginia fans too. We cannot forget about West Virginia fans. They have nothing else to do other than to be online. So they'll get you going as well. But so far, even Utah, I've seen several Utah accounts that I've just had to unfollow, just because like they never shut up, just talking about nonsense half the time. But still, like, there's no group of people that beat Central Florida fans. They'll start arguments over how many bathrooms that you have in your stadium and whether that's enough or whether they're nice enough. Like, who cares? Like, but they've argued with us about that. They've argued, I mean, anything. They're just, you know, it's the heat, I think, and the humidity, or the chance of being eaten by an alligator at any point in time of their lives. It just gets to them. So they got to escape somehow.
That's great. I love that you brought up Iowa State. I was an Iowa State fan before being a CU fan. Both my dad and my brother went there. So talk about a team that travels well. I mean, they would at least call it Hilton South there for the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they have a special place in my heart. But yeah, UCF, that's Utah. We haven't gotten a lot of Utah flack over the years. Arizona is kind of the big one out of the 4 coming over, that, especially during basketball, their stupid U of A chant. You guys are going to hear that, and it's not fun.
I mean, like, you know, on the opposite end of that, like Houston, they have no fans ever anywhere, and they haven't since I've, you know, paid attention to them as their American conference mates as well. They might have 2 like fan accounts online, maybe one fan podcast that I know of. You know, for a major U.S. city, they're pretty quiet. Baylor and TCU just above Houston, I would say, as well. So some quiet ones as well there. You gotta look hard to find a Houston fan, that's for sure.
Very nice. But yeah, I don't think I had any other questions, Chase. Oh, one more parting thought is I did want to comment on Coach Prime in general, because he gets such a bad rap. And I just wanted to give a shout out and just say that like 80% of the things that are published about Coach Prime aren't true. So look at the Colorado accounts and see what's actually true. He's, from what I've seen, has been a solid head coach. We recently had one of the players, he called them original Buffaloes, which were Buffs before prime, come on our podcast, and he had nothing but praises to sing of Deion Sanders. So just wanted to leave with that.
Very good. Love it. Gentlemen, this has been great, informative for me. I know the listeners will learn some things along the way here as well. If Bearcats fans, Big 12 fans, whoever want to find you guys online or the podcast, where can they find you?
Yeah, probably X is the place where we're most active. It's at Folsom Frenzy Podcast. I think it's podcast or pod. I think it's podcast. We have our link tree on X. We're also on YouTube, which we're growing a lot on YouTube. So check us out on YouTube. If you search Folsom Frenzy Podcast, you'll find us. And then Instagram, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc.
Perfect. That'll be linked in the show notes, like they always are when we have guests on the show. Gentlemen, this has been great. I will certainly reach out again. Maybe we can team up, collab again, either mid-season football, basketball, or when things are a little bit heavier on the content, and we'll see what we can come up with.
Yeah, thanks for having us on and cheering for you guys every week other than October 26th. And hopefully it'll be a fun season. Wide open Big 12. Can't wait for it. And looking forward to meeting more Cincinnati fans as we go.
Absolutely. I'll see you guys.